Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
We are ready for the event.
Troy School District, this is Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Dr. Barbara Fowler with the Troy School District. How do you hear me?
We have you loud and clear. Welcome aboard the International Space Station.
On behalf of the entire Troy community, I would like to welcome you and thank you for this great honor. We have some students here with us that would like to ask you a few questions.
My name is Allison, and this question is for Commander Williams. What time zone do you use, and when is your bedtime and work time?
That's a great question. Time's difficult to manage up here because we don't have the normal day-night cycle that we have on Earth. We usually work on Greenwich Mean Time, or the time in England, and we get up at 6 o'clock in the morning typically and go to bed about 10 at night. That's about 6 hours earlier than your time. But we also shift to different time zones for different events like spacewalks or an arriving vehicle. For example, this Friday we have a Russian Progress supply ship coming, and we're going to shift and go to bed about 6 hours early, get up about 6 hours early for that. And then we're also going to shift a little bit more to the left earlier for a shuttle arriving next week.
My name is Hayden, and this question is for Flight Engineer Creamer. How do you keep your muscles in shape in a weightless environment?
Hayden, that's an awfully important question because we want to stay healthy, and when we land, we want to be strong enough to get out of the vehicle, and if we have any emergencies, we want to be able to depart the vehicle under our own power. So keeping our muscles strong is a good thing, and so literally we lift weights. I know that sounds funny for a weightless environment, but we have a weightlifting machine here that we use another force other than gravity to provide us with resistance, and in this case we're lifting against a vacuum. We're pulling plungers against a vacuum, and we can lift up to about 500 pounds or so, the equivalent thereof. And the other thing we do is we exercise by running and biking on machines that will let us do that so that we stay healthy. Good question.
My name is Rebecca, and my question is for Flight Engineer Noguchi. Do you have any superstitions or traditions before or during launch?
Yeah, very interesting question. Yeah, there's a lot of the customs or tradition for launch. One thing I remember for our Soyuz launch is before we set up for long travel, Russians have to sit on the seat for a very brief amount of time. So we're dressed up and ready for going to the launch pad. TJ and I both sit in a small room and sit down in the seat and then set for go. So that was an interesting Russian tradition, I think.
Our names are Jonathan and Emily, and this question is for Commander Williams. What would you do if you need surgery in space, like an appendectomy?
Well, that's a very good question. We have the equivalent of a small emergency room here on the ISS, and we're all trained in medical procedures. Plus, we have doctors, flight surgeons on the ground to help us out in the case we have a medical problem, an emergency or an illness or sickness. But we're also all checked out very thoroughly before the flight to make sure we're medically qualified, and that really reduces the chances of having appendicitis, for example, as you said. But if necessary, we are equipped and trained to handle medical emergencies.
My name is Brittany, and this question is for Flight Engineer Creamer. What do you do for fun on the ISS?
Well, there's a lot of things we do when we have enough time to do that. If nothing else, there's great views out our window. We can take wonderful pictures, and that are just sometimes all-inspiring, because looking out on the Earth is just inspiring. Perhaps you've heard all three of us have been Twittering, so we can actually surf the internet and find diversions, and we also have movies.
My name is Sashika, and this question is for Flight Engineer Noguchi. What would happen if you took non-dried food, such as fruit, into space?
Yeah, very good question. Usually we only have space food like a can or the freeze-dried items. But when we have a new space vehicle arriving to the space station, they usually have some kind of fresh food. You know, Russian usually like onions or garlics, and the space shuttle usually brings like tomatoes or grapefruits, those kind of things. So we are really looking forward to having a Russian Progress vehicle and the space shuttle in the coming weeks.
My name is Fabio, and this question is for Commander Williams. Does capillary action work in microgravity?
It does work in microgravity. In fact, we use capillary action. You see, I've got a medical experiment strapped on me now. Sometimes we have to draw our own blood, and sometimes we draw a lot of blood, but other times we just prick our finger to do a blood test, and we use the little glass tubes and use capillary actions to fill the tube. It's actually very interesting, because if you separate out gravity, you can do some very interesting experiments using capillary forces.
My name is Tarun, and this question is for Flight Engineer Creamer. How do you take a shower?
That's a really very practical question. We can't really take a shower here the way we are currently configured. If you spray water, water doesn't know how to go down a drain because there's no up and down. I mean, it just goes bouncing all over the place, and that can be bad if the water goes into electrical circuits and that kind of stuff. So what we end up doing is we end up using a little bit of soap, a little bit of shampoo, and a little bit of water, and we use basically a sponge bath. We soap and water and a towel, and we wipe down. We are not quite ready yet to do actual showering.
My name is Alex, and this question is for Flight Engineer Noguchi. How do you clean a space station when all the particles are floating around?
Yeah, very important question. We usually do the cleaning Saturday morning, and we have a special vacuum cleaner. And usually all the dust usually collected in the air intake of the air conditioner. So everything, all the small particle up to like spoons, everything goes to the filter. So it's more like a lost and found.
My name is Shiva Priya, and this question is for Commander Williams. Have you ever worked with animals in space? And if so, what kind of experiments did you conduct?
Well, we have had animals in space. Just a couple of months ago, we sent home some mice that were up here for 3 or 4 months or so. And the experiment that we were doing with them, they had to do with bone loss. Or bone density loss. You know, that's one of the things that we're very interested in a weightless environment. Our bones get weaker because the calcium leaches out of our bones. And we want to understand that process so we can prevent it from happening for future long-duration flights to back to the moon or even to places like Mars. So that's one recent example that we've had that. We've also had small microorganisms studying DNA and the effects of weightlessness on the formation of DNA. And you might have heard recently in the news that we hatched out some caterpillars, which eventually turned into butterflies, and we observed them go through their transformation in this weightless environment.
My name is Blake, and this question is for Flight Engineer Creamer. How do you get in and out of the space station without losing all of the air?
That is an extremely important question. When the shuttle comes up and you get to watch what's going on, you'll see a couple of spacewalks going on. And I think they're doing 3 total. And what those guys do when they go outside is they go into a tiny little room and close the door. And that tiny little room is called an airlock. And when they go into that airlock, it's just about big enough to fit 2 guys in their spacesuits and the equipment. So it's not a whole lot of air that's left in there. And when we close that second door, we end up pumping out the air back into space station, so we don't lose that air out into space. And then just the very last little bit, when they open up the door to go outside into space, is what that little tiny little bit of air is what we lose. So we tried our best to retain all the air we possibly can by using the airlock.
My name is Billy, and this question is for Flight Engineer Noguchi. Do you think launches and landings are scary?
Absolutely not, actually. The launching and landing is both fun. I flew in space shuttle 5 years ago, and that time both the launching and landing was extremely fun. And I'm really looking forward to the Soyuz spacecraft landing this time in 4 months.
Our names are Arushi and Noah, and this question is for Commander Williams.
What kind of emergencies do you face on the space station, and how might you react to them?
That's another great question. We have 3 types of emergencies that we prepare a lot for. One is a fire, another one is a depressurization or a leak, and then the third one is some kind of a poisonous spill or toxic spill into the atmosphere. All 3 things would be very bad for us. So we do a lot to prepare for those. We have equipment on board. We have engineers and teams on the ground that help prepare the equipment and the procedures to deal with those things. We have had a couple of false alarms and minor incidences related to that in the history of the space station. And so we have had to respond, and thankfully they've been either minor or false alarms. We think we're in pretty good shape though to handle those things. But those are the kinds of emergencies that we would be most concerned about on board the space station.
My name is Wesley, and this question is for Flight Engineer Creamer. How fast does the ISS travel around the Earth, and is it the same speed as the Earth's rotation?
A good physics question. I can answer it a couple different ways. In the first way I can answer it is probably the best for you guys to understand how fast we're moving. We go around the Earth about every 90 minutes. And so that should answer the second question. We don't rotate as fast. We actually rotate faster. And then to give you a miles an hour, we're trucking through the atmosphere here, or just outside of the atmosphere area, at about 17,500 miles an hour, which is about 5 miles per second.
My name is Patrick, and this question is for Flight Engineer Noguchi. Given the effects of low gravity on the human body, will it be possible to live for extended periods in colonies on orbit or on the moon?
Yeah, very good question, and I think the answer is yes. So now the Commander Williams is here for 120 days, and we're in space like 40 days, and we are every day exercising to counteract with the bone loss and muscle loss. And I think in the future, mankind can expand their possibility beyond low Earth orbit into Moon or Mars and beyond.
My name is Rodwa, and this question is for Commander Williams. Do you have to drive the space station while it's in orbit?
Well, thankfully, the computers do most of that for us, and we have flight controllers on the ground, both in Moscow and Houston, that work together and coordinate with each other to keep the computers programmed for the different maneuvers and the different attitudes that the space station has to be in. So for the most part, we're hands-off. It's on autopilot, you could say.
My name is Mallory, and this question is for Flight Engineer Creamer. How is the social aspect of life on the ISS different from that of life on Earth?
Well, the first thing I should say is there are a lot of similarities. We are a crew of 5. Our 2 Russian crewmates are at the other end at the moment. And our job on board is to make sure that our operations, our mission is successful, and part of that is working with all our friends, the 3 of us and our 2 Russian compadres. So that interaction is just like we do on Earth when we work as a team together. The uniqueness of being up here is we get to share an experience that not many people get to accomplish, and we can also look out the window and look on the Earth that is just amazing to see from this perspective. But also, we can't go away from station, so we have to kind of invent our own humor, our own diversions, and our own sharings. And as a result of that, because we are isolated like this, it's a little bit different than the social aspects on Earth.
My name is Catherine, and this question is for Flight Engineer Noguchi. When you come back to Earth after being in space for so long, do you feel dizzy or heavy or anything unusual?
Yeah, very good question. I remember last time I flew to space and come back, I feel like my gravity sensing function is really reduced. So like every time I turn my head left and right, I feel like the whole world is spinning, and that kind of sensation lasts like a week or so. And after that, we kind of readapt back to the 1G. So I am expecting the same type of effect when I come back to Earth in 4 months.
My name is Brad, and this question is for Commander Williams. Would a small fire spread in the space station, or would it be contained?
Well, the space station is designed to contain fires. Actually, it's designed first to prevent fires, and then if one were to occur, to contain it. As you know, a fire needs an ignition source, fuel, and oxygen. Our oxygen levels are the same as what you're breathing right now down there, so they're not so high that to cause a fire to spread just from the oxygen. Most of the materials on board are not prone to burn, so we don't have a lot of what you would call fuel on board. And we try to keep ignition sources from being exposed to potential fuels and oxygen. So, if we were to have a fire, and most likely if we were to have something, it would be an electrical short or something like that. The systems are designed to remove the electricity, to cut off oxygen sources. We do have oxygen lines. They would be cut off just in case it was an oxygen fire. It wouldn't continue to be fed. So, like I said, we're in pretty good shape system-wise to contain fires.
My name is Eamon, and this question is for Flight Engineer Creamer. What is the most unexpected thing you have seen during your time in space?
Most unexpected thing I've seen? Well, maybe I should tell you about the most unexpected thing that I'm aware of that it's happened up here. When we sleep, we don't lay down because there's no up and down. We actually sleep in this orientation that we're standing right now or floating right now in a sleeping bag. But after you've been asleep for a while, you kind of feel like you're laying down. And then when my alarm goes off, and my alarm clock is right here, right next to my ear, I still have this desire to sit up. And when I sit up, I'm looking now to my right to find the alarm, and even though I'm sleeping in basically the size of a telephone booth, I'm lost, completely in the dark. I can't find my alarm. It's just that orientation change, and it's happened. I've been here for a month, and it's happened every morning the alarm's gone off. I can't find my alarm.
Well, to everyone involved, this has been a once-in-a-lifetime experience for us. Our thoughts will be with you always, and we appreciate your service on behalf of our community and our nation. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you very much for coming on board today. It was a pleasure to have you join us. And we wish you all the best. And kids, study hard.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event. Thank you.